For our field project presentation, I worked with Allison and Shauna. I'm going to start with my part and then we'll move on to the next. So I'm going to start with a group discussion about it. I attended 3 different self-help meetings in the Hornell, New York area, as there is very few meetings in this area due to the rural aspect. I was curious to see the different types of meetings that were offered and the amount of distance that had to be traveled to attend them. Has anyone ever attended any self-help meetings?
I have not attended a self-help meeting.
No, I have not, besides for this class.
And say, if so, what types have you went to and how welcome did you feel being a newcomer to them? In my experience, it was easy I felt welcome, but I felt like because I was new, a lot of people weren't as willing to share as they normally would have been. Did you have that same experience when you went, Shauna?
I did for one of my meetings, but just the AA meeting, but the Al-Anon one, since I do have addiction in my family, I think was a little bit more accepting because I kind of belonged there.
Oh, same. I'd went to Al-Anon prior to actually doing this class, as a family member with addiction in the family. So it was that one I felt very welcoming into. The others, it wasn't as to people were more willing to share in that one, which was really surprising to me. All right, so I'm gonna go on to the self-help meetings and the presenters that were there. Meeting one, I did Al-Anon. The woman who ran it, his name was Amanda. She was a family member of her own. She shared her story about her struggles in the beginning of accepting the things that she could not change with her significant other and moving to build her own hope and belief that things can get better without trying to force him to make the changes that he wasn't ready to make at the time. Um, this was more of an eye-opening. I liked the Al-Anon because it was more individual based. She wasn't really a presenter. Anybody who really wanted to share could step up and share. She was the willing participant who raised her hand first. So that I liked the Al-Anon for that. Meeting two, I did Alcohol Anonymous. The person who chose to speak that at that session his name was Chase. He shared his journey about recovery and the abrupt moment when everything changed for him, a life-changing car accident that ended his life not only once but twice. He was resuscitated 2 different times, and he since then in his recovery has not relapsed or anything. It hasn't been easy, but it was it was a journey for sure, and it's still a journey. His key point was that it's necessity to admit that you have a problem and the pride that you can take in for asking for help rather than the shame side of it. Um, a lot of the individuals there focus more on the shame piece of it, of how they felt bad admitting they had a problem, where his was more that he took pride in the fact that he got to the point where he could ask for help. Um, that was really eye-opening there. Meeting three was Narcotics Anonymous. The guy who shared his name was William. He went by Billy. Billy shared his recent experience of relapse and the power of being able to forgive himself to keep progressing in his journey. He had lost his children due to his relapse, and instead of giving up with the hope that he would get his kids back, he wasn't willing at first, but he got to the point where he was willing to forgive himself in order to keep progressing in his journey, because without that forgiveness, he knew he wouldn't be able to keep going. His key point was that it was okay to give yourself the grace and embrace the process. Every journey has some bumps and battles. If you pick up the pieces if you pick up the pieces, you can keep fighting and going forward. How this experience changed my view on substance abuse and key takeaways. My view of substance abuse truly didn't change much, as many of my loved ones have struggled or struggled currently or are in recovery of their own. The Al-Anon group was really eye-opening, and it gave me a new outlet for myself, as the addiction of a loved one has impacted me, and it's all right to not want to face the battles alone. I learned the importance of never jumping to conclusions and allowing others to share their own story. Self-help meetings can play a key role with someone with addiction recovery, as not everyone has a loved one to support, or a family and friends for that matter. Something deep down I knew, something that I knew deep down was, but the struggle with this is the idea of change and wanting to better for those I care for. These meetings further help me to understand that change is important, but it is a must. It must be wanted by the individual. If they aren't ready, if they aren't ready to take part in these meetings and make a change and a difference, the odds of relapse is significantly higher. So pushing a loved one into doing this really isn't going to be beneficial for them. They have to want to do it.
You're muted.
Hi, my name is Ali Santa Maria. I did mine in drug court. I went to Penn Yan. So drug courts are an evidence-based court program that provides an alternative to traditional criminal justice cases for individuals that are struggling with substance abuse. The goal of this drug court is to provide and help participants recover from addiction, as well as prevent future criminal activities for nonviolent offenders. For Penn Yan, the treatment court is held every Tuesday at 2 p.m. Before the meetings for treatment court, they do a team meeting where they kind of discuss the individuals before, make sure they're all on the same page. If there were any sanctions, they discuss those prior, and again, make sure that everybody is aware of what has been happening. So for me, this didn't change my view on substance abuse a ton. I do have family members as well that have struggled with it, and some of them that are currently still. I also work at a hospital where I see a lot of individuals who are struggling with substance abuse. However, the difference when I see it in my current role is, if they're ready for this step, we either connect them with like an outpatient, like AA meeting, or we help them get an inpatient to a facility. So the program for Penn Yan is generally over a year. They said, a year and a half for most cases. They did just have 2 individuals who finished their program for the first time ever in a year, which was a huge accomplishment for them. So their treatment is broken into 4 phases, where phase 1 is when the individual has met criteria for a substance use disorder. They then will present the case and vote on acceptance in the court if they feel like this patient or person is ready to take this step into drug court. They normally have them go inpatient during this phase and do rehab. For phase 1, they meet weekly for drug court, and this phase normally lasts around 3 months. They really focus on that clean time. While they're doing that, they're meeting with Heather, who is coordinating everything for them multiple times a day and throughout the week. Phase 2 is bi-weekly for drug court meetings. They also have to attend 2 groups for outpatient meetings per week while they're in that phase. And then phase 3 starts to get a little more independent. They're still meeting with Heather But then they're meeting every 3 weeks for drug court. In phase 4 is monthly meetings for drug court. And then after you've completed phase 4 is when you go into the graduation phase. So during that, there is a contract that you sign that is 8 pages. And it is outlining everything you're going to endure during this treatment. And there are a wide range of sanctions that they could possibly run into if they violate this contract. Some of them are essay writings, book reports, reports on video. They might have to increase their court reporting schedules, more frequent drug tests, and even incarceration. While attending drug court, the participants were called up one by one up to the stand. They mainly just discussed their week, what they had been doing in the week, how the week felt. Did it feel harder than last week? What progress did they make? The judge then discussed, from the beginning to here, how they've done. They also brought up if there were any sanctions. 2 individuals while I was there had sanctions. One did end up with it being resulted in an incarceration, but they were still allowing this participant to continue with drug court. The other one was a random drug test where she was in phase 1 still, but did test positive for cannabis. When the judge brought it up, the individual was not willing to admit to use, and they talked about, being open and honest and taking accountability is a huge part of recovery. And it's a lot harder when you're not taking accountability for it. And, being only in phase 1, it's a huge thing to have a sanction already. And they talked about, if this continues and the accountability isn't there, that this may end up in a sentence or, being terminated from drug court and then just having the alternative incarceration sentence. This individual then had to meet with Heather at the end, and they from now on have to do everyday check-ins in the morning, and again, more frequent drug screens. After the drug court is done, they have time to meet with the judges, the coordinators, case managers. Some of them have to come up with a new plan. While I was there before drug court, there was 4 random drug screens that had happened right before it. So after it, they just kind of have those discussions. So something interesting that I found when I was going through the contract with Heather was we were talking about the accountability aspect, and they were talking about, poppy seeds, and that, that is not an excuse, and that they're specifically signing to this on the contract that they will not eat that stuff, that they're going to be aware of what they're eating. To say oh, I didn't know it had poppy seeds is not something that is acceptable for them. Another thing that I found a little interesting was it was a lot more laid back than I had imagined it would be. It was kind of like a casual conversation with the judge, where when I had went to court in other jobs, it definitely seemed a little more structured. So I thought that was really interesting. And through talking with everyone, like Heather, the sheriffs, the judge, the hardest drug that they have found for individuals to become clean from is marijuana. They have struggled the most with that. So now I want to open up first for any questions that you guys have, and then I just have some questions for you guys. Do you guys have any questions?
Is Penny Ann's county or town?
I think it's the town.
It's not as loosely structured if you go to a county one. It is much more by the book per se.
Yeah, it was they all had really good rapport. It was very casual, which surprised me, but that also would make sense that other ones would be stricter. So one of my questions is, do you feel like, anyone who has substance abuse should be eligible for drug court if they have a background, or do you feel like there should be the hard stipulations?
I feel like unless they get in trouble, they shouldn't have to go to drug court. If they're a willing participant in going into meetings or into recovery, then I feel like they shouldn't have to go through drug court. I was gonna comment that it's interesting that they sign a statement saying that they won't eat things like poppy seeds to, use it as an excuse, and that's how they kind of got around it, is signing something so that they're aware of what they're putting in their bodies. Thought that was interesting.
That
Yeah,
contract is very long. The county
Yeah.
one is like 15 pages. So the county one's much
Wow.
larger.
Yeah. I mean, like, I had figured that it would be strict, but when I was reading through it, I realized like how invasive and like how much you really have to be ready to take this step, because it really does control your entire life. The one individual that was positive for cannabis, when she was denying it, they were saying, part of your contract is knowing what you put in your body. So if you did something or took something that you're not aware of, like, that's still a violation of the contract. Like, you need to be very aware of that. But it was nice to see that, like, when they needed to, like, not have it as loose, that they still had those hard conversations, even though they were like having fun and laughing, and through some of it, that it's still very structured at times when it needs to be.
And the sanctions they can be sanctioned for and have any type of consequence. Like there's really no set guidelines for the consequences for sanctions. Like because I had attended one of these when I was at Casa Trinity, they can be sanctioned to where they have to write an essay that's due the next week when they come back, explaining what they did and taking accountability. Or another gentleman, he was sanctioned, I think it was in phase 3, and they made him do 30 for 30. He had to do 30 self-help meetings in 30 days.
Wow.
Like
Wow.
they are very extensive, or can be. So it's very surprising to me that she was sanctioned, but there was really no consequence besides
Right.
a conversation.
Right. And just daily meetings, which they kind of already do. It's just making sure now that it's at like a specific time. Like, I think they agreed upon 9 a.m. She had to be up and she had to be on a meeting, or in person. One of my other questions is, do you feel like drug courts adequately address the underlying causes of substance use, like trauma, poverty, stuff like that?
Yeah, I don't know.
In my experience, it has, because it really doesn't discriminate. Anybody's welcome. It's just they have to put the time and the effort into it. It's not a program that costs you money. It's something that's offered by the county and paid for by the county. And if you're not, if you're not willing to do it, then you're not willing to do it. But it's not something you have to pay for. You can just go. So
Yeah,
you
absolutely.
just have to be willing to put the effort in.
Yeah. And then I just had one more question on my end. Do you feel like drug court treats substance abuse more as like a medical or a criminal issue? And, do you feel that this is fair?
My experience, both.
Yeah.
I mean,
I agree. In my experience too, both. I think it's more heavily on consequences and legal action, whereas if you are just an inpatient and you're in detox or you have continued on, then there's more mental health piece because you're seeing counseling, you're getting medications to treat your comorbidity. So I think that, there's a little both in drug court, but I feel like if you're in another program, then it's more based on mental health, which it should be, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. And that's all I have for mine.
Uh-oh. Where'd it go? Did your PowerPoint disappear on your end?
Give me a second. I'm popping back up.
Okay. I was like, did I do that?
You can take control, Shauna.
Oh, no. Apparently it's gonna talk for me. How do I stop it? It can work for me. Oh, sorry about that.
Shauna, that's the one I
Okay.
put in for you, so it's not gonna
Oh,
talk.
okay. So it's not gonna talk. I was like, waiting for it. Okay, so I attended an Al-Anon meeting, which was my third meeting I attended. Al-Anon focuses on family members, partners, or friends impacted by substance use or alcohol. Autonomy is an important part of Al-Anon. Sharing experiences, emotional support, and coping strategies happen in this meeting. Themes of codependency, boundary setting, and self-care are important for families, partners to set for themselves. During the meeting, they talked about how to identify someone is affected by another using alcohol or other substances. They also shared how they were affected by someone in their life that had an addiction. So again, like the other ones, I'm not going to tell specific stories, but this meeting I think was the most meaningful to me. I have a family that has addiction in it. My brother is currently in recovery. So I had to make sure that I set boundaries, and boundaries is huge with a person with addiction. My job is not to convince them to go to into recovery, to work their program. They need to be able to make that choice for themselves. And I set in boundaries that I was not going to do that. I also had to make sure that they weren't codependent on me so that they can make their own choices to go into recovery. Self-care is also coincides with setting boundaries. You're setting boundaries to make sure that you're taken care of and that you're not, like I said, the other side, coinciding with their addictive brain is that you are setting boundaries and self-care so that you can coincide with their sober brain. So they also talked about some warning signs of somebody dealing with an addictive partner and what that looks like for them. It looks like walking on eggshells. It looks like making excuses. It looks like enabling them. And that goes back to setting boundaries. So we're not going to enable people that are around us. We're not going to make excuses for them. We have to help them accept accountability for their actions. We can be emotional support with boundaries, because if we don't have boundaries, unfortunately, their addictive brain is going to take over and take advantage of us. So in this meeting, I felt like I was accepted because I had family members that were had addiction issues. So I also experienced a family member that had alcohol addiction, and this person used me as a scapegoat. This person used me as a support system and not adhering to my boundaries. I was trying to be the savior. I was trying to get them into meetings. I was trying to get them into recovery, but I needed to realize that they needed to do that for themselves. And this meeting kind of put forth and it acknowledged that I needed to do that for them. So I think that, kind of reflecting on all of these meetings, Al-Anon, I think, was the best one for me just because it hits so close to home. But as a therapist, I can utilize each one of these meetings for my clients, because even though my forte is mostly just working with mental health and addiction coincide together. So I need to understand what these meetings are about so I can refer my clients to them, so I can explain and kind of maybe do some role play of how these meetings might go in therapy so that they're not so afraid of making the right step and using their sober brain to acknowledge that they have some issues. Also teaching my clients about the sober brain and the addictive brain and how that can influence their choices. So I guess some of my questions to you guys are, have you ever seen somebody use their addictive brain over their sober brain?
Oh yeah, most definitely.
I also have.
Yeah. So one of the things that was kind of pointed out to me in the Al-Anon was identifying if you are surrounded by somebody who's addicted to a substance or to alcohol. Do you know any of those warning signs?
I would say I'm pretty familiar with the warning signs.
What do you think some of them are?
Some things that I've noticed, like in my personal experiences, my fiance's mom is an alcoholic. There's a lot of like, um, she hides a lot.
Mhm,
She'll also, you know, like hide her drinking and be like, "Oh, I'm just having grape juice today,"
mhm,
when everybody else around her knows that it's not grape juice. Um, Another thing that she'll do is like ask for money and be like, "Oh, I have to go to the store and get groceries." But when we're like, "Oh, we can get you. We're gonna go to the store too. What can we get you?" It's something that she no
mhm.
longer wants.
Yeah,
So those are some of like the things that like I've caught on to for like warning signs.
yeah,
Same.
makes
As I
sense.
say, same for me. My significant other's mother. She's the same way. She downplays a lot of things, and she likes to think that nobody knows what's going on. And really, she's the only one that's really oblivious to anything. She isolates a lot so that
Mhm,
she doesn't, so that people don't see how bad it really is, and
Yeah.
it's just one of those things. The deceitfulness, that's definitely the narcissistic behavior. It's not my,
yeah,
it's, I didn't do it, it's your guys' fault, that kind of thing. So
mhm. Yeah,
it's
using you as a
definitely,
scapegoat, definitely. Yeah.
yeah, it's definitely present.
Yeah, it's funny because it's not funny, but my significant other's mom is also an alcoholic, and she has tried to hide things from us. Recently, I have tried to put in some boundaries. I've kind of distanced myself and let her make her own choices on what recovery looks like for her and how she's going to go to the doctor and go about those things because I was bending over backwards to try to get her sober. And my self-care was dwindling. I was getting sad for her. It was really affecting me. Every time I talked to her, I could feel myself getting really angry. So when I put those boundaries in and realized that she needed to do that for herself, and that once she made those, I could support her in those choices that she made, it was it was relieving. I was relieved
Hmm.
that I was no longer angry anymore. I was no longer resenting her for those choices. And I also want to be an emotional support for her, but also for me, emotional support means that it kind of coincides with boundaries. You say
Hmm.
you're drinking orange juice, but I know the truth. And I'm going to set a boundary that says that you're not going to just lie to me and think that I'm going to accept it. So
Yeah.
I'm going to tell you the truth if you like it or not. So I think that was huge for me to be able to
Hmm.
express my feelings and set that boundary that I'm not going to let you just lie to me.
Yeah.
So
I can
I
relate to that.
hope that goes better for you than my situation.
Well, she got really sick, so she didn't really have a choice to go to the doctor and to get help. So it's a very slow process, but she had called a counselor, she's seeing a doctor. So right now it's kind of going forward, not
Yeah,
as much as I would like it, but it's going forward. So
that's good.
yeah.
Yeah. It's hard wanting something more for somebody than they want for
Hmm.
themselves. And then, setting that boundary that you can't do that.
Yes.
I think the hardest pill to swallow was accepting the fact that it's not my problem, it's theirs.
Yeah.
Yes.
So it's,
True.
Yes.
while you're setting that boundary that you want to still be there and be present for them as much as you can, you have to be willing to accept that this is their problem that they have to solve on their own. You can
Yes.
support them, but they have to be the one to do it.
Yes. It's totally different than my brother, who had addiction issues. When I called him out on his addiction, he said, "Yes, I want help and I'm ready." Now,
Wow.
you know, third time in recovery, he's doing his own thing and he's creating his own path, his own coping skills and rewriting those coping skills.
Yeah.
But it was totally different. He was ready to be in
Wow.
recovery. But, you know, so that was a little bit different for me at that point. So it just kind of shows that each person's
And I think it's
recovery is
the
different.
age,
Yeah.
the generational age plays a big factor in that too, where
Um,
the alcohol was more, that was more of the thing for the older folk.
Mhm.
That's what they did. They drank.
Mhm.
Yep.
That's what they do. Where people that are middle aged and are working, they don't have that problem.
Mhm. I agree. I
Where
think it is a generational thing. I think you're right because it was more accepted for the older generation, whereas
Right.
our generation is kind of, that's not okay and we shouldn't do that.
Well, and then you got like the younger folk who are just fresh out of getting it, be able to legally drink, the 21-year-olds that like
Mhm.
do get those DWIs, do get those DUIs,
Yeah.
and they can't legally drink, and that they can't accept that. That's not okay. They just earned that right.
Yes.
So it's one of those things that age really does play a factor
Yeah.
in that recovery process. It takes a long time to be okay with the fact, where others who've been able to drink for years, okay,
Mhm.
well,
I agree.
this is something I can live without for right now. I've done it for a long time, and you just gotta meet them in the middle, I guess.
Yep. Meet them where they're at, right? Try to
Yeah.
assist them from where they are. Uh, Great. That was awesome. Thank you for your participation.
Good job.
Great. I guess that's it.
Mm.